So I'll just give a quick, I'll just set it up very quickly. So I saw it first on the Useful Idiots. They only put part of it. And by the way, Sam, I had to subscribe myself to Useful Idiots too. I tried to go through your account yesterday and I wasn't able to, so I got just fed up and I subscribed to my Taibbi.
I don't share my password with anybody ever. Never, ever, ever, for nothing. And I love everyone at Disney and at HBO Max. And so, God damn it, man. For God's sake. I have to call a lot of people. Okay, go ahead. You do.
Don't worry, they don't have any jurisdiction in your area, so they can't come after you. So it's all good.
I move a lot. Okay.
You're a nomad. We'll discuss nomads later on in the Yalda section. But
let some people know. Go ahead.
But yeah, so first they had this guest on, and they put the half of the interview on Useful Idiots on their YouTube channel. So he's a journalist and professor, Christian Parenti, and it's based on this article that he's written, a really long article that's published on the website called nonsite.org, and it's Adolph Reed's website. And it's called The First Privilege Walk. And pretty much if you go on the Useful Idiots Substack, you can watch the second half of the interview, and you really have to. It's too much fun. It's one of those which you can listen once or twice. At first, I thought there was going to be a lot of Herbert. Yeah. At first, I thought there was going to be a lot of Herbert Marcuse bashing, which, I was a bit scared of. Because now I think about it, I only read Herbert Marcuse like in one class 10 years ago, but I don't know why he's left such a mark on me. But there was just this one specific thing that he said. And once I was trying to find it again in the book and I couldn't even. So I don't even know why I have such affinity to him. But I remember just enjoying his readings so much.
What is that one specific?
That one specific one is that, and I look around and I feel that to be the case, and perhaps goes to the core of his arguments. Then we'll come back to the article, which from what I recall, and honestly, this was literally 10 years ago. Yeah, he was saying that most people don't even know or don't even have like something that they want to do as a career. Like if this is this is how I remember it now. So if you tell them, hey, you know what, you can actually go and do whatever that it is that you want for a career. You don't have to go to this crappy job. You can have a career with your passion. He says that, and based on my anecdotal observation around me, a lot of people around me, if I could offer them that somehow, I could give them this thing, go do whatever it is that you want, they'll just perhaps take part in a lot of consumerism, or maybe just going out and hanging out and like part. Not that those things are bad. I'm just saying they're not there waiting. They're like, oh, really? Now, boom, I had this project or this creative thing or this that I would have loved to devote my whole life to it, which I hadn't because, I had to put food on the table. And that kind of resonated with me more than anything, I think, Marcuse in the class I heard.
Yeah, that's what I think you're right. That's his whole argument about sort of the sort of intellectual limits, I suppose, or intellectual incapability of the middle classes that emerged in the Western world, especially United States. That's what it boils down to, that they choose consumerism over, let's say, international solidarity, they choose
or anything, a passion project,
social change,
or social change, or even a passion project. I don't even take it that far,
No, but that is in a Marxist way. Passion project is something that it destroys the conditions of alienation, right? So that is the condition, that is the Marxist utopia. So because there is no alienation. But I think first,
I'm sorry, I just want to say one thing, and I don't want to blame it on like people, that they're just like, consuming consumerism and all that. I understand. Maybe it's because how they grew up. Maybe it's because of the environment around them. They were shaped like this 25, 30 years. So they've reached a point in their life where all they know is that, okay, I need to work to survive, which is totally true. And then like hanging out with X and Y, and everybody likes to buy stuff. You think I don't like to buy stuff? I also buy stuff. I don't take part in mindless. I hope I don't take part in mindless consumerism, but I also like to buy stuff, and I also like to hang out. So I don't want to come off as this kind of person.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, just to make it sort of a bit of it's a tiny tangent, but I just want to make this point. I think what Herbert Marcuse and I just mentioned, I think Matt Kreisman should have the political theory chair in Harvard. But like there is a thing with left that I think sort of plagues the left since, at least, I mean, it's a left and all that is very new anyway, but I don't know if it's from German idealism and I'm reading about it right now, or if it's just a human condition thing. But this sort of historical exceptionalism that they have, that sort of, oh, things are at the end of we are at the end of the algorithm, we are at the end of the machine. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think what they're Americans and at the time Europeans like Herbert Marcuse, especially Germans, which was a very, very young nation. Germany only became centralized under Bismarck, like in late 1890s or something, 1880s, or sorry, early, sorry. Yeah, I don't know exactly.
That's also my
But
understanding that Germany is
wait,
one of the last European countries to become.
yeah, it's Germany and Italy. I mean, Eastern Europe. But then my point is that all Americans and Europeans political philosophers are doing are basically cutting up with a lot of things that ancient Greeks, Machiavelli, so medieval Europeans, ancient Persians, ancient Chinese, we're talking about, like, this is the condition of the urban middle class. That's all it is. And I don't think it's the end of the anything, or it's the beginning of the anything. I mean, there's this very cheesy TV show I watched, The Witcher, which is not as good as it should be. But it has one good line in it, which is one person saying the end of times is coming or something. And the main character says, I've lived through, he's like a warlock of some kind. He says, I've lived through 3 different supposed end of times and 1 apocalypse. It's all horse shit, and in a way it is end of times, because it is the end of that system as we know it. For example, when Rome falls, it is the end of times for Romans, somewhat, but it's not for end of time. So I think there is that. That's what I sometimes find negative, because it seems Herbert Marcuse and some other people, like, sometimes they seem to generalize about their own historical moments and their own historical humanity. As you said, we don't know if our humanity is conditioned even, or if it's something. I mean, I don't think it's something innate, but it's a big debate out there. So
yeah. No, I mean, that is always, I mean, we always I'm 30, I'm in my early 30s, and I also feel like I've lived or heard about end of this and end of that, like, so many times.
6 times.
Yeah. It's always there. So maybe by the end of this show, who knows?
No, may I go to the fun parts though?
The article though, should we get into the article or no?
Oh, let's do the article then, the fun part. Yeah.
We didn't even mention the
article. I forgot about the article, yeah. I mean, that's the Mike, his Mr. Parenti's work is so awesome that, it's just your mind. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway. So his article is, this specific article called The First Privilege Walk is, well, I think people are more familiar about Privilege Walk than I am. And apparently it's been going on for the past like 30 years or so. It's not really a walk. It should be called like the privilege line or step, because apparently it's this exercise that's been done, and he dives into the history where it comes. And the history is linked to Herbert Marcuse's third wife, who also had some other links to other
Scientologies.
Yeah, Scientologists and all this. But apparently she was very much involved in the beginning of this, which is that, you stand in the line and then someone says, like, if you're white, and they're all about social identity issues, the questions that are asked. At least this is how he's arguing it. So they ask, like, if you're a white person, take 1 step forward. If you've ever been told off about your ethnicity, take 1 step backward. And it's supposed for people to realize, like, oh wow, I'm so privileged, and like this discrimination that, I don't realize that, like, I'm oppressing other people through my privilege, kind of. Am I a little bit mixing up here? But yeah, and in his article he dives into the history of this, which he traces it back to the third wife of Herbert Marcuse, which was a person who was significantly younger than him, because, sorry, I'll just wrap this up, because she was one of his students. And then afterwards, when his second wife passed away, he got married to her. So she was a significantly younger person than Herbert Marcuse, just so you know how old she was, and that around the time when she apparently helped to bring up this exercise, which is apparently widespread in the US. Katie Halper talked about where she's done it. They do it in universities, at camps. People have
I would never do
that in schools. Yeah.
I would never do that. It's what the hell, am I complicit in the crimes of my grandfather? What the hell is going on? So I'm just, that's the emotional take. But I think more, I mean, thinking about it just more substantially though, I think Mr. Parenti sort of connects it to, in my view, greatly connects it to the social upheavals of 1960s. So if any, I'm sure most of our viewers, the 1,500 friends, really, not viewers, that we have seen this, this amazing documentary by Adam Curtis, The Century of the Self, that sort of argues, puts forward this thesis that is shared by some on the left, that in the 60s, with the failures of the left to really provide any significant material change, a lot of liberals or people on the left turned inwards. And in, this is my contention, this is not in Adam Curtis' view, that you had all these emerging liberal religions. So you had, for example, you see, and by the way, you see that in a lot of post-war societies, that emergence of cults, a lot of people who came back from Vietnam War and World War, they like this, these are eras for cults and sort of new ideas to emerge, both, in my view, positive and negative, right? So you had these social upheavals in 60s, and this seems to be this sort of privilege. You should focus on your manners. It's like a complete ideological, it's the end game of liberalism, really, because it's all the mind palace, right? It's all manners and etiquette, and materialistic conditions are just completely ignored. So yeah, it was, yeah, fantastic to listen. And by the way, I think if anybody's interested in the movie by Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think that is a very similar critique that he is making of the hippie movement and all that. That I think I'm stretching the limits of interpretive sort of discourse to its limits. But that's just one interpretation I had. So that's maybe for some people find that interesting.
Yeah, no, and exactly. And I mean, talks about Marcuse himself, is like, I don't think Marcuse like denies fully that like the importance of materialism, which is just full out Marxism, but especially like his third wife and all this, they also bring up, the importance of like, I guess like a social awakening for like the revolution, right? For which, and
yes, she argued more. I don't know about Marcuse. To be honest, is so confusing. But yeah, anyway, she was, Marx is not. I mean, that was the most common criticism in the Soviet Union and in 60s and all that is too materialistic.
And the professor here, I just got his name, Christian Parenti, and he argues this is exactly what, like, quote unquote, I don't know, capitalist would want, because you're forgetting about economic inequality. You're just putting that in the side, and you're working around with, at best, I think the best thing you can say is that you're making like discrimination like more universal, so it isn't like only like a certain part of the class, or like only women that are like discriminated or have like a worse economic situation, or only this ethnicity or that one. You just make sure it's a bit more even. But he says that falls right into the hands of capitalists and people who want to keep the current status quo to go. So you focus on identity politics, and I guess Hillary Clinton and all this is just the ideal example, right? I mean, it's just the prime example, getting Hillary Clinton elected.
And the illusion is that we will come up with a society that is meritocratic in a way that it will genuinely reward the best in their profession according to their best abilities and all that. But that's, in my view, it's an illusion for liberals, and the reality will be a system that will become crony, like some kind of crony capitalism, state fascism. That's the end game, really. I mean, I think that, I completely agree with him. And genuinely check it out. Like, subscribe to Useful Idiots just for this one video.
And he traces the history of the lady's like dad, who was like this kind of communist, but like by the time he passed away, he was like known as like a capitalist. But then I want to come back to the materialism a little bit, also to link with the previous thing that I said, so I don't Go ahead.
Okay, do that, because I was gonna that this video has great gossip potential, so I wanted to focus on that at some point. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
okay. I'm glad you're going to be going there because that was fun too. But yeah, I just
Uh,
want to say, like, I agree, of course, with him that, materialism, that's like the most important thing, right? So making sure that most people, I guess, if you understand materialism as being able to provide for themselves and their family and have a roof over their head
and
and for a
your class position is the determining factor, not your racial or your
Mhm.
religious or your, class position
Yeah.
is the most important.
But then I just wanted to bring in a little bit of what Marcuse was saying, like the first thing that I said that's been stuck in my head. I think for overall, for people to, understandable and be happier, or just, to get along better, maybe people need to have, like, it's not what his wife was saying with the privilege walk and stuff. I'm going back straight to Marcuse himself, because you can have there are so many people who have their material conditions met and they're not walking around happy people. They can have a lot of issues. They cannot find satisfactions in things. So I just find that Marcuse's like claims and all this are also like important to take into consideration.
I would, I have a bit of a different take. I kind of like, my take is that I always found Marx and a lot of not Marx, but a lot of Marxists and a lot of mostly the ones that tend towards more less materialism. They have this idealistic view of human beings. What do you think
Mhm.
you're dealing with? This is not like a perfect God. I mean, as you said, like they have like you have a stomach ache, and like I have done that. I've had some physical pain, and like I'm dealing with that, and then somebody within my family is nice to me. What's wrong with you? And I react in an angry fashion, right? We are not dealing with some like beautiful machines, and that's what I
Mhm.
kind of wanted to mention, German idealism, because I think Marcuse and a lot of European and American thought is still, because I don't know if you know this, but the largest European minority in America is German, actually,
Mhm.
and uh, German background or origins, whatever. So I think that it's a bit of a sort of a hangover or a remnant of the German idealism of, and even you see it in works of Nietzsche, but you don't see it in Kierkegaard, which I'm increasingly become uh, like, oh, it's good, but yeah, uh, it's just these like okay, yeah, people can live up to that, and that's, yeah, all right, yeah, and people are not supposed to, like, okay, if you had that expectation, I understand the problem. It's kind of like the Plato and his metaphysics, it's almost gets it's almost, you have made the material world almost like the ideal world, metaphysical world of Plato, which is this perfect thing, you know because I mean, you could argue German idealism, like at least Nietzsche and these guys were sort of an answer to that metaphysical and the reality of the existentialism. So yeah, I come from it that angle, not from the angle that people actually have problems. It's just that we are crap. Like we have money, we have a lot of, we are like genuinely a middle class person in a person living in most cities. I mean, again, I think Chapo Trap House guys once say that an average American, most Americans, even a poor American, has more entertainment in his at the thing of his fingers than the Roman Emperor. So it's just
Yeah.
we don't want to, and all of us, high class, low class. That's why I say meritocracy is illusion, because put in a different position, I probably do that same thing myself, because we are very much subordinate to our physical realities and environment. That's all.
Okay, I see what you're saying, and I don't know actually the point that I'm going to make is going to actually go perfectly what you're saying or counter it in any way. But I just want to say perhaps why what Marcuse says, like, that resonates so much with me, and I hope I'm not contradicting myself too much in this video, and I haven't gone back and read Marcuse's stuff recently at all. But which is that me personally, right? I didn't have material issues to overcome, right? But when I found this kind of like passion for politics, news, social sciences, and all of this, it did change my life. I found that it just gave me this infinite, like always having like something
wait.
that I'm
Pause. You're just young to the game. I had to make that comment.
I thought you were gonna say something. Let's cut the video. I have to take a phone call or something. It was so serious. Let me pick this up.
I'm most serious about my jokes.
But okay, but it's been a good like 11 or 12 years, I think. And for me, I think that's why that wherever I read that in Marcuse's book, or I fully imagined it, I don't even know. But it resonated with me because for me personally, once I did find that like personal like goal, objective, passions, and all this, it did change my life over like fully how I just like thought about things and everything. So that's why I'm just giving such importance to that. Maybe it's more based on my own personal experiences.
That's what I was going to actually say right after I made the example about my stomach ache. I don't want to generalize too much based on analogy. I just wanted to give an example of humans acting like pieces of shit, even when somebody's nice to them, even when conditions are not necessary, like you react in a haphazard way. So yeah, I like to clarify that too, that we don't want to generalize based on these examples. We just want to, but if you look at, I think, human history, you can find evidence of for this case. I think there is ample evidence, but don't take the analogy as the explanation. Analogy is just the way to demonstrate, right? So yeah, but I agree. I think both of our perspectives to an extent is right. Again, this sounds boring, but both of our perspective is quite right, and it's probably somewhere in the middle. I would say. I would say it's both. That's it's cyclical. The conditions are bad, and humanity, it's difficult for humanity with its physical limits. It's difficult to come out of that. So, it's both. It's sort of it's a goddamn helix. I'm telling you.
Yeah. And last point, maybe I'll make about this article, and I think the professor makes this, and maybe this defends Marcuse a little bit and his focus.
Gossip, yeah.
We're going right now, which is that Marcuse's writing do come at a time, especially his writing in the States and stuff, where there was perhaps the best material conditions for a lot of Americans, given that it was the baby boomers generation and all that. And I think
relative to past,
of course, everything's relative. But yeah, that's my final point on
and it was the most super, like the 60s and 70s are the era where you see like America had a massive labor movement, and they just after, it's under coercion as well as, it's always a mixture of buying them out and coercing them. So I can understand living in the conditions then, with the assassinations, with the you might feel far more hopeless. Then what I don't like is generalizing it for all time and all, that's what
100% with you there. But okay, let's move on to, so you tell me what are the few gossip items, I'm guessing related to Marcuse's wife and stuff, right?
Marcuse and Mr. Parenti, I didn't know he, what's his name? Christian Parenti?
Yes.
He's a son of Michael Parenti, the famous sort of Marxist, I don't know, theorist, Marxist writer. I know him mostly from a famous, I think, a speech he gave. The speech, I'm sure you've heard of it. The one he talks about that, like nationalism. I want to redefine nationalism in the US and define it in a very international. And he's very famous. I haven't read much of his writing, but so it was we talked about the sons of like Ed Miliband and David Miliband and Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, sons of people who sort of went very sort of, and Michael Parenti or Michelle Parenti, but by the way, I'm not sure.
But he didn't go against his. He didn't go against his dad, though. Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, in fact, it's like a sort of a reverse example. His dad was far more of a sort of a, you could say, soft lefty. I feel. I mean, the one article I read from Christian Parenti was just so good, and he's doubled down on his dad, and I'm like, Dad, I meet you there, and I'm gonna top you. I'm gonna be even better. It's so good. It was so fantastic. So I wanted to start with that gossip. That look at that boy. He's grown up to be such a good boy, hasn't he? He's fantastic. It was so good. It was so good.
Yeah.
And you could argue, but by the way, Matt Taibbi's parents were in reporting, so you could argue Matt Taibbi sort of fits that scenario. I don't know about Katie Halper. I know Katie Halper's dad is a psychologist, but or psychiatrist.
But this reminds me to Max Blumenthal video that you showed me. So he did with
Yeah,
Primo Radical, and
that
Primo
was
Radical
gossipy
guy
too.
asked him like, so because Max's dad was a Democrat, he worked at the White House. Was he a journalist or was he a
Yeah,
policymaker?
oh yeah, he was the closest guy to Clinton's. He's the
Yeah.
guy who's associated the most with the idea that reporters and the role of reporter lobbies, like a friendly relationship, got so it's so weird that Max Blumenthal. It's just anyway. He's the guy who put out this sort of birtherism story out there about Obama. He's that guy.
Stop! No, what do you mean?
Yeah. He put out. He was the first person in a press conference. I mean, the people on the left claim it was probably like, I don't know, coordinated or sort of, they asked him about the Kenya story and Obama's birthplace, and he does that tactical. I think he does that. It's years ago, so
Max is
I
that.
might be wrong. Yes, he does that tactical sort of not deny, not confirm. We don't know where he's born. He could be born anywhere. Yeah.
Listen, there are a lot of problems in this world, a lot of unsolved mysteries, but most people you can know nowadays where they were born. Seriously, I don't need a CIA team to do it. Yeah, even
like,
if he
what
was.
difference?
But give me a piece of paper and I'll go to the right ministry and I'll get the answer for you if you guys need that.
Yeah, but well, they don't accept you're probably buyed out or something. But anyway, that's why it's so odd that Max Blumenthal is just such a start. It's not just your run of the mill, media. It's what I mean. It's like turning out Joe Acosta's son is a Trump supporter. It's like Jim Acosta. Yeah.
And then so then Primo Radical's like, so how was like Thanksgiving dinner and all that with your dad? And Max is like, well, I actually have good parents and they never held it against me that I had differing views. So sometimes fantastic. We get into, and he said, who doesn't disagree with their parents? And I mean, I couldn't agree more. And who doesn't disagree with anyone? I mean, anybody who sees like any kind of disagreement like that as being such a big issue, that is really a bad challenge to have in life.
I mean, my dream genuinely was that going to a top university and like focusing all my education on political stuff, my parents would accept at least one of my political arguments. And they still don't. They just, no, fuck you.
When I was doing my master's, after my bachelor, I lived with my parents for a brief period. Actually, my dad is much more closer to me now. But I would say with my mom though, and I remember it's because I would always like counter with her like some stuff because I was there, so it has to be ongoing, and I wouldn't counter in bad ways. So like sometimes she'd be like, "Oh, I see how this and that," but then I moved out and all that hard work was lost. But not that it makes too big of a difference. To be completely honest,
I didn't have. I mean, I moved out, and it was far better for our relationship, shall we say? A lot of talks about people we have no power over just end it,
so there's not even anything to say there. Okay. Anything else?
But Marcuse said gossip is mostly that his third wife seemed to have been a bit of a as they say in Iran, because in Iran it's famously like people gossip over dicing greeneries, herbs, right? So let me get some herbs and let's get it started. So what was the deal with his wife?
Man, I used to be so into gossiping when I was a kid. Then I found politics, and now you can just do this kind of gossiping. They say politics is the lowest form of art, and I definitely agree with that. It's the low, like the politics you show on CNN and shit like that. It's this Manchin said a bad, Biden said a bad thing. That's the low. But in terms of gossiping is the highest form of just crap. I don't know, shit. It's so enjoyable. Yet 100% the satisfaction.
The satisfaction that so you're thinking about his personal life too.
But the gossip, which isn't irrelevant. I mean, the professor didn't put that all because relevant. He put it in there because it
wasn't gossip at all. That was
it was about the family. It was about
that was the only disappointment.
where the privilege walk comes from. But for that, you guys will have to go listen or read the article because I'm not prepared to say who was what and
delve
the
into
dad
the
went where and
yeah,
he
whatever.
did that.
No, but
Um,
it was fun. It made the article more fun because there is quite a lot of in the article that it's not discussed in the video. And by the way, Adolf Reed's website, bloody fantastic.
oh, that was
Check
my
it out.
first
It's
time
so
on
good.
it. Yeah.
It's like
Okay.
it's so that's like my ideal thing to like. It's so good, peer reviewed, same, but it's cool. It's not some bunch of like retired generals and CIA hacks. Basically.
Good stuff. But okay, Sam, let's keep this party moving. Should we move on to Dr. Jordan Peterson was on Dr. Oz?